This one goes out to the Artcasters. Ooh, Artcasters! I say you're catching your spell, Artcasters. Catching your spell. Ooh, you're gonna guess that spell. Strike a hell. Whoa! Ooh. Hi, 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 hi. Aye, aye.
All right. Welcome back to Artcasters. This is episode 450. So kind of a milestone episode. We got 50 more before we reach the big 500. Wow. It seems like it wasn't that long ago we were celebrating 400 episodes.
I know we're 400 or 550 away from 1,000. I mean,
let's not get ahead of it. All right. Okay. So we have a returning guest, and we'll get to him in a minute. Well, we're going to kick it off the way we always do. Go around the virtual room. We're going to kind of go counterclockwise this time. And so I'll kick things up. You're on my channel. So here on my channel, you can also find my series, Making Comics 101, if you're a comic creator, or if you want to learn to be a better comic creator. It's the most comprehensive free course on how to make comics anywhere. It's right here on the YouTube channel. Just look for the playlist or go back a number of videos, because recently I'm doing something a little different. And you can check that stuff out too, where I'm taking vintage nostalgia, ephemera, all kinds of crazy stuff, and kind of reinventing it, put a weird spin on it, and it's a lot of fun. So check those out. Also, I've got a website, circworks.com, where you can find my comic book, Young and the Dead, is a kids versus zombie adventure story. And I've got all kinds of other cool stuff up there. I've got digital products to help you create comics better, faster, more efficiently. All that stuff available on my website. So check all that stuff out. And we're going to head on over to Josh and see what's going on in his world.
All right. Let me see if I can adjust this real quick. I just remembered that I can do this. So you guys, this is the magic of special effects. Look at this amazing special effect. I have an album out that just came out. It's called Stumbling Blindly Into the Road. It's a weird, crazy album, and it's available on Spotify and all streaming platforms. Looks like this magic floating, amazing high-tech business here. So anyhow, check that out. Check out Jacob's Apartment, my graphic novel, and 2 stories. And then, just, follow me on Facebook and, well, not Facebook, please, not on Facebook, on YouTube and all sorts of stuff where you can see me work live on art and stuff like that. And then the rest of the stuff's at joshuakemble.com.
All right. So we're going to go back to, like I said, we have a returning guest, Deece Casillas, and he is a stand-up comedian and comic book writer. He recently launched his first issue, but now he's back with a second issue of Kill Stan. He'll talk about it. And there's a Kickstarter going, which there's a link in the description. But Deece, if you want to tell people more about your project and everything.
Yeah. Like Scott said, my name is Deece Casillas, stand-up comedian, writer, etc. The comic book, the current project is Kill Stan #2. It's #2 of a 10-issue series. It's kind of I tell people it's a neo-noir crime thriller, but I'm lying to them when I say that. It is a character piece about loss, trauma, and the crazy things we do and we feel like we have nothing left to live for. Suicide by vigilantism is essentially the premise. It's about a guy who wants to end his own life, so he decides to do it through vigilantism. And yeah, I kind of, there's some action thriller stuff in there that I use to trap people into the actual psychosis of the story of someone's, their little spiral into madness.
Yeah, it's very quick, quippy and stuff too, the dialogue and everything. So I think you'll dig if you're a fan of like Deadpool and stuff like that, as far as or even Spider-Man. There's a lot of quips, but there's obviously some serious stuff in there. And this one definitely leads off with a cliffhanger. So we'll have to check out the second issue, which like I said is live right now. There's a Kickstarter for it. So
awesome.
Yeah, Kickstarter's live, runs till March, I think 5th, their 4th or 5th. We're at about 30% of our goal now. We're trying to get to $2,500. We do have some stretch goals and things like that. We definitely love to get more than that. So yeah, support it. There's some awesome exclusives just for Kickstarter backers, some covers that you can only get on the Kickstarter, and then also packages where you can catch up and get number one if you didn't read that. And you can also, there's also packages where you can get my 1 hour comedy special, all kinds of goodies. So yeah, combo stuff, fun.
Cool. So we got a message saying that I am very quiet or Josh is very loud. So hopefully I move my mic a little closer. So we'll see. And I don't know how he sounds to you. So maybe he's the gauge on where we're at. Just let us know. But so you've got the book out. The first book, second book's coming. And so when you're in a position like that, obviously you want to let people know about it. So we're going to talk a little bit about conventions as a way to promote, or just promotion in general. You have a unique, something unique to you. Like I said earlier, you do stand up. So you travel and do that. And you also have like a merch table. So that's an avenue a lot of artists, a lot of writers of comics don't really have. So
yeah, that's
very interesting to me. I'd like to know a little more about that. But also, we were talking a little bit before the show that you're planning on you're working on trying to kind of book stand-up shows, kind of near conventions and everything. And but it sounds like you've already been out there promoting this thing. So just how's it going, I guess, as far as like number of conventions you're doing? And you did want to talk a little bit about numbers and how you're doing compared to other people and
yeah,
all that.
I mean, not necessarily even a comparison, just like
right.
I'm interested in other people's metric of
right.
what they look for in a convention and their idea of success, because I haven't really been able to talk with creators about what I've talked with some about conventions they like and why they like them, but it's like there's this local convention that's a $200 to get into, or you can go to Baltimore and it costs $350 for a table, but then you have to get to Baltimore, and then it's like saying that's a $500 round trip flight. And there's just right. So I'm like, what's people's metrics of success or kind of their algorithm they're looking for when they look at these things? As for me so far, I mean, we've been really fortunate, selling, doing a lot of stand-up comedy shows, selling after the shows. I've been pleasantly surprised how many people.
Oh, I think you might have frozen.
Yeah, I don't know if you can hear us or not, but your video is frozen. We can still hear you talk, but then I think it all went up.
Yeah, you guys are cutting out a little too.
Okay,
so,
okay.
Okay.
It's back.
I've been selling them after stand-up shows and surprised how many people have been buying them. It's kind of because like a unique thing that you don't see at a stand-up show, and if you've got people to enjoy your comedy and enjoy you, they're probably going to buy anything you're selling. You do also get people who are like, I've pulled it out after a show and be like, I also do this weird thing, a comic book. And I can see people go like, oh, fuck yeah. And I'm like, oh, cool. Yeah. This is like a real comic book. But the conventions, doing a lot of conventions and a lot of shows, and it's been interesting, but really good, I at least in my opinion, for what I'm doing, it seems to be working. And I'm in the black at least. So I can't I can't complain. But yeah, again, I'm so curious as to what other people think and what they're how many books they want to sell or are selling, or budgeting for travel and all that stuff.
Yeah. So, I mean, I can kind of give a brief history of kind of my experience with conventions, and it's a little different because even though I do comics, I've always, up until more recently, I've always had a number of different things that I take to conventions, to the point where sometimes I think it's almost to detriment, because sometimes I think if you have like one thing, if you're doing one thing, it's easier for people to comprehend what that is.
Yeah.
Versus me, before I had prints, I had little mad science project, all kinds of stuff that I would sell. So, I was mostly doing local, I was doing the big, what used to be Phoenix Comic Con, now it's called Phoenix Fan Fusion. And I did that for a number of years, and then I would keep, the first year was really good, so I'd go back, and they started, I moved up to, at one point I had a booth, and then I realized, you know what, I get about as much space as a booth by getting 2 tables. So I moved back to 2. So it's a lot of figuring things out. But it was also me, trying to do my own original thing that a lot of people didn't really understand. I mean, it did pretty well, but then I started noticing there started to be a dip. And then I think the year before like COVID hit, I'm like, you know what? And it was just a lot of work, for a lot of setup and everything. Cause I was just, I had a really elaborate, backdrop and displays and all that kind of stuff. And I just kind of like, I'm making money. I'm definitely profiting at these shows, but it's a lot when I take into consideration that, like, usually a week prior, I'm setting up and doing all this stuff and figuring all this out. I'm like, I don't know if it's worth it. And at that point, my online sales for things was ticking up, and I'm like, I just don't know if the shows are worth it. And I kind of, just by happenstance, I made the decision not to continue. And then the next year was like COVID. And I think some people lost some money because some people bought tables, and I don't know if everyone got it back. So I kind of consider myself lucky for that. But, afterwards, I'm kind of right now easing myself back in. But me personally, I made the decision that I wasn't really going to do like big shows unless I'm invited as a guest, which I know not everyone has that opportunity. I've been invited as guests to shows a couple times where they actually pay for your table, and if it's not local, maybe your room and board or whatever, So I kind of decided, well, if somebody's willing to have me come out, then that takes a lot, because with no table costs, that makes it worthwhile. And then I also started doing smaller one-day conventions, because they're not the one I'm doing now. There's a convention that's here in Arizona called it's called ASCAP, Arizona Comic Arts Festival. It's a one-day show.
Sorry, I'm so immature. Can you say that again? What's it called?
ASCAP. What did it sound like?
ASCAP.
Oh, no,
it just kind of sounds like you're putting a hat on it.
Josh.
Sorry,
Arizona with a Z. So
look, I've been teaching high school lately. Okay, my mind is in the gutter.
But it's a one-day show, so there's not a lot of it's not, you're not committing to a whole weekend and everything like that.
Yeah.
And I really like that show. And they've had like offshoots. They've had like one that was kind of like what called Cocktails and Comics, where it was a night show, and then there's bar and drinking and stuff, and that was really cool too. So and one thing that I realized there at the last one of those I started making like just interesting connections there, and it was the one thing about that show is it's comic focused. It's, especially a lot of indie comics, which most comic conventions now really aren't. So that's the one thing I really like, is because it's sad to say, and even like Phoenix Fan Fusion, they don't even have comic in the name of the show anymore, which makes sense because it's more about pop culture, where some places like a San Diego Comic Con, a lot of them still have comics in it, but the amount of comics you're going to find there is very small. So smaller. So I do kind of like that. And the other thing I started doing is just going basically with my comics, and then I have some I also sell these comic workbooks that people can use to create comics, and like notebooks, and they've got some of them have like templates for like thumbnailing pages and all kinds of stuff like that. So more comic related stuff I'll go to and just focus on that. And those shows I do pretty well at, and they're just fun to do, and it's not a big commitment. So that's
Yeah.
kind of my history. What kind of shows have you been doing, Deece?
Well, kind of a mixed bag.
Yeah.
So, I've, the once the comic book was released, I was booking, any conventions I could get into
Yeah.
that were reasonably close and fit with my schedule. But we've done a couple like 2-day conventions, like real legitimate comic cons, and then a lot of around San Antonio here where I live, they do these little like collector shows pretty regularly at this what used to be a big mall here, and it's mostly, it's mostly like toys and collectibles and crap like that. A lot of Funko Pops. You maybe get one or two vendors that have comic books.
Okay.
I am definitely the only person that's an indie comic creator there. But also, I've been doing about one of those a month, and I can sell about 50 books or so in a weekend. So it's like,
that sounds pretty good. Especially, I think I always said if you're like the only person at a convention selling comics, then it seems like you do all right. It seems, because it's so different than what everyone else has. As long as the convention has something to do with comics or pop culture, or that's the right audience for that.
Yeah, there's always like one vendor who's doing just comics, and like a couple other vendors that have like a short box or 3 of comic books.
Right.
But again, it's mostly like just pop culture stuff, a lot of horror related content, toys, Funko Pops, real heavy on that, things like that. But that show I do, and it's like, it's 10 minutes from my house. It's $100 a table for a weekend, and I can sell like 50 books, and I'll bring a couple of short boxes of comic books I got for sale and sell some of that stuff too. But the conventions, as I'm looking out, scheduling my whole year with trying to tie the stand-up tour with the convention tour, and really making that happen. I'm looking at like conventions in like Baltimore, Charlotte, Memphis, Chicago, a couple in Alabama, Arkansas, things like that. Some in Washington that I'm going to.
So you gonna do Maryland at all? SPX?
No, I'm trying to do the one in Baltimore. What's it called? What the hell's the name of that one in Baltimore? It's a big one. Let me see if I can.
Well, if you're ever in Maryland, you should try SPX too. It's one of the best indie friendly conventions in
Is it? Okay. Yeah, I was, somebody told me that they go to Baltimore, and they said the Baltimore one is very comic oriented, that's kind of what I'm looking for. And I don't, obviously it's one of those things, because, some people, I talk to some creators, and they're like, well, this one, I don't sell a ton of books, but there's like a lot of industry there to make connections. And I'm like, all right, do I need that? Or do I, I don't know how, I guess I want other people to read my book, but also, I don't know how many, I'm not expecting someone to swoop my book up. I'd rather have people reading my book, not like handing it to an editor who's like, great, thank you. Like got 150 of these this weekend.
Well, and the myth of publishers in general is the idea that they're going to do all that legwork for you, and what it comes down to is half the time you're still going to be having to do cons and sell, and so it's like you're not really missing too much. I like having a publisher for distro, and that's about it for distribution.
Who has published for all his books, where I'm kind of like you, Deece, just going the indie route all the way.
But I think the full indie route is equally, like, you're not missing a ton, especially if you're not concerned about like distribution, because it's like, anyhow, I want to let Scott go, but I'm curious about selling at comedy shows, because that to me sounds pretty cool, and I'm curious, your numbers like at a comedy show, like compared to like,
versus a small Comic Con? I'm curious.
yeah.
Oh, I mean, I definitely sell less at a comedy show. It also
Right.
depends on the size of the show.
Okay,
Yeah.
got it.
I mean, like if I'm doing a show and it's a small club or a small venue that's 80 to 100 people, it's different when you're doing a club that's 350 people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, but I mean, I did a show the other night, which is a small room, and I think we had like 75 people, and I sold like 10 or a dozen copies. Which,
Yeah.
I think,
you know,
I think because it seems like, I don't know, what do you sell the book for?
$10.
$10. Okay, so it's relative, speak comedy show wise versus like a t-shirt, probably $25, $30 per t-shirt. I mean, it's probably a pretty good entry level item that people, I think people would pick up.
Yeah, I mean, I think what's really surprised me is how many people are like, because you never know. I mean, I don't know why it surprises me, but there's more comic book fans just in general life. Realize, I guess, because sometimes there are people that probably still actively reading. Sometimes they're like, oh, I used to read comic books. Like I was a fan, and then I got married and had kids, but like I still have a couple long boxes. So they pick it up. But I mean, it's like it's one of those things. It's the same reason I offer my comedy special and stuff like that on my Kickstarters for the comic book, because it's like it's another product I have that's evergreen. Like it doesn't. I hate to break it to anyone who buys the tier that has the comedy special in it. I already got paid for that. Me sending you a digital copy costs me nothing. but there is a value to it, perceived value for the consumer of having this product. So like I can sell it essentially.
Well, getting into that, what you're talking about is price as far as getting paid for that. Now I'm all for that. I've got digital products that I created years ago and they're still selling, and it's just like
evergreen.
Yeah, it's awesome. But
I'm sorry, Madrine Philip, I don't know how to pronounce that name. He asked how many pages the comic book is.
Oh yeah.
The first number one is 28 pages. Each issue, there's 10 issues. They range between 24 to 32 pages approximately. Each book is a little different. I didn't relegate myself to a certain number of pages. I wanted to make sure we hit at least 24 to have more pages in it than a typical Marvel book. Like the industry standard, but I also didn't want to cripple the story by being like, well, this is 2 pages more, I better cut something. It's like, I'm paying for it. It's the same price to the consumer. Enjoy the extra content on me.
Yeah. And I kind of did on my book. I stuck to that up until the final issue, which hasn't come out yet, but it's coming very soon. But I gotta break this down to what's 21 pages, and then towards the end, I'm like, okay, it's got to be like 32 or something like that.
So the last Young and the Dead's going to be like Cerebrus, like a big phone book.
Yeah, if you get the last issue, or I'm also going to launch the collected version at the same time. So it just kind of depends. So, but I don't know why I thought that, because it was just But nowadays with it was old thinking, because like that was back when TV shows had to be certain length. Now you watch a TV show and they're all different. It just doesn't really matter anymore.
They're not fitting it between 7 or like 3-minute commercial segments.
Yeah, exactly. So and my book doesn't even have ads, which I mean, ads don't work the same as commercials as far as
100%. So, I just kind of figured I didn't need any. I mean, I'm paying for it. I'm printing it. I'm publishing it. Like, I don't have an editor. I might as well instead of cutting content, I just want to make the story as impactful as I can in the pages necessary. And if one issue is a couple pages less, one issue is a couple pages more, it's like, that's fine.
Right. And well, hopefully you're not paying for all of it. I would assume when you get through the Kickstarter that you're ordering much more than the number of backers you had, so you have extras. I mean, that's always the goal, because if you can raise the money to print as many as you can, especially when you're in a position where you're out there, hustling, going to shows, whether it's comedy shows or conventions. I mean, because then after that, it's pretty much pure profit because you gotta, a $10 price point for a color book, you should be making money on. A lot of people are out there selling print on demand colored books for like $5, and I can't see them making any money. It's just, that's what my book's black and white. I sell it for $5, but black and white is way cheaper than color. So.
Well, so the way I did it is, so I have a creative team I work with, an artist and he does all the art and inking, and then a colorist and letter. So 2 people, the colorist and letter is the same person. So
you got to pay them though, is what you're saying.
I paid for the entire first issue up front. And then before I even started the Kickstarter, I already sent it to the printer and ordered copies for number 1. So I was like, I'm doing this either way. And luckily, we had really great first Kickstarter. So, I was able to get whole again on the comic, and then publish, and then have a little money to put towards conventions, and then you start making money off the books. Like I said, we're really lucky to just immediately be in the black and not behind on it. And then same thing with number 2. I kind of I really just took the money from the Kickstarter number 1 and just put it into making number 2. Really, it's just kind of all reinvesting into recreating the book.
Yeah, and it's good. It sounds like you're on a pretty good timeline too, as far as getting the books out there. Whereas me, it's just my issues come out every 2 years or 3 years, and it's just I've been working.
You can only do so much, Scott.
I know. It's not. I love comics is my first love, but it's not always the one that makes the most money. So a lot of times I'm focusing on other kinds of art endeavors and things like that.
Yeah.
But it's going to be nice to get the whole thing finally done. And I think, and once you get to that point, I'm curious, because I'm always curious. Like we've got friends that we speak with all the time, who have multiple issues, and once they collect them, they said after you collect them, that the single issues really don't sell that much, but that the trades do better, because it's a complete story. Because when you're an indie comic artist, you buy a comic, you don't really know when a customer anyway doesn't really know when the next issue's coming up, or even if they're going to be around to get it. So I think people really like that they can get at least a good portion of the story in a single volume. So yeah. I mean, we are we're trying to do every 3 months right now on an issue, which is really just as fast as we can work, because that's great for an indie book.
I mean, it really is a pretty quick turnaround time. I would if my hope is that if we can continue on a upward trajectory with selling the books and distributing it the way we have, because we've been getting into a lot of comic book shops and that are doing really well with it, that if I can afford to, I can pay my artist a higher page rate, and he can focus more on the book, and he would have to do other things less, and he would be able to get him out faster. Right now he works in advertising, has a day job, so it's tough. If I can pay him enough to focus on just the book and get it out faster, I definitely would do that. But we just needs to make sense to do it. But right now it's every 3 months, which it's a good, for an indie book, it's a good turnaround time, and gives me a little breathing room. We do plan to do a collected edition with all 10 issues at the end of it.
That's gonna be a big
honestly
book.
I'll probably do, when I get to 5 issues, I'll probably do a 5-issue collected trade.
I would.
And then once 6 through 10 come out, I'll do a 6 through 10 issue trade, and then around the time I'm launching my next project, my next book, the new project, I'll probably put a complete trade in around that time.
So does the story conclude at 10 issues then?
It is. It's all wrapped up. Yes. Okay. This story is wrapped up, but what some things live on in other ways, maybe. So we'll see.
I get it. We get it. Yeah. Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
I actually have. This is going to be a scoop on the Artcasters show that no one's ever going to remember.
All right, we got an exclusive, ladies and gentlemen. An
Exclusive that I haven't
exclusive.
told to anyone but the Evernote in my phone. If all goes as planned and I keep doing comic books and the more projects come out, one day a book is going to come out that is not announced, that no one will know, but it's a secret. It might be a secret sequel that is unrelated but related, and no one will know until the book is over that they just read a secret sequel.
Ooh, I love this.
You're gonna pull M. Night Shyamalan. What was the one that connected back to Unbreakable?
Glass. Split, yeah.
Yeah, where the twist was it was in the same universe. Yeah. That's cool. Yeah.
That's really exciting. I love the idea of kind of stories that sort of relate toward the end where you're like, oh, like it actually has a connection of same universe, or maybe it's like you didn't realize you're checking out a backstory, I don't know. I always find that really cool, because why not?
I came up with this idea and it really makes sense. And there's a whole, anyway, I don't want to spoil too much. I have a master plan in my head for all the comic books I want to write. So hopefully I get to them before we die or the world explodes.
Yeah, which may not be too far away.
Which also, I assume when the world explodes, I would die. Those are both, I guess, that seems redundant.
I mean, it'd be pretty cool if you didn't and it exploded. I mean, that'd be pretty interesting. But
either I die or the world dies. I don't know. That sounds awful, like I'm threatening someone now.
That's like that classic. I'm gonna like if you die, I'll kill you. That kind of thing. Yeah. I love it.
So, Deece, I'm curious. Like when you do a convention, what's kind of your style of promotion at a convention? Are you out? I mean, you just kind of wait until people get to the table, or I have this thing that works pretty well for me where I have a bunch of stickers printed up, and I just, when you want a sticker, most people don't turn you down. And then once you hand them something, then at least you got their attention and everything. Yeah. But I don't know. I mean, what do you kind of do when you're at a convention to kind of bring people to the table?
So, I mean, here's what I found, and this is not to stereotype, creatives or comic book fans,
right.
But in general, like people who create comic books or fans of comic books are not always the most gregarious people. Yeah. Artists can be reclusive. A lot of misanthropes in that profession. So.
I have no idea what you're talking about. we have no idea.
Yeah. So the first show I did, I saw people sitting, a lot of people kind of sitting back, and they've got their booth up and set up and big things, and they're sitting back and head down, and they're drawing on their iPad the whole time and not really. And I'm just like, I am on my feet from doors closed. I don't sit down, and I'm like talking to people like, hey, how you doing? But I'm not, I don't want it to be like schlocky, because I hate like walking through Walmart and then someone in a suit pops out of an aisle like,
right, exactly.
Hey, I love your hat. Then they're like, does that mean LA? And I'm like, fucking hat that says LA. Yeah, it does. And then they're like, cool. Hey, anyway, who's your internet provider? I'm like, you didn't give a shit about my hat,
Right.
So I want to be like, basically I just say hi to people, just say hi. Like, hey, how you doing? Hope you're having a good weekend, or like, I'll ask me like, you like indie comics? And if they stop by, if they come over, they'll be like, what do you got? I'm like, well, this is, my first comic book I just put out. It's a labor of love, literally lifetime dream come true. And then I'll just pitch the book and be like, it's about a guy who wants to end his own life. So he decides to do it through vigilantism. Really, it's a character piece about lost trauma and the crazy things we do and we have nothing left to live for. And then usually people are, if once you give them that, you'll gauge the reaction. And if they want, you can figure out if you want to give them more.
Yeah.
I mean, I did sales forever. So like, it's just, you can gauge them and if they're interested and kind of how to walk them. And my big thing is that, and I've, not that I'm like a fucking guru here, but I've told a couple creators that I know this. I'm like, I don't want to sell them my book. I want to sell them on why I love this book and I wrote this book.
Yeah, because no one can fault you for being proud of something. It doesn't come off as bragging. Like if you say, "Oh, I'm the best artist" or whatever, that's bragging. But if you say, "I really put my heart and soul in this thing and I'm really happy with it," no one's going to fault you for that.
Yeah. I just want to tell them why, my connection to it, why I love it, why it's important to me. And usually that and then like, because I want people to not just buy this book. I want them to buy the next book, the next issue of this, and then the next book I write, the next title completely that's different. I want to make attached to people and have like a true connection with these people as not just
you're
fans,
not trying to sell like a lemon. You're trying to like sell sell something where you get a return customer who's satisfied, right? Like and likes the person who provided it to them, like a lifelong customer, not a short term.
I don't know how many creators in the industry I adore that pretty much anything they do, I'm gonna buy. Just because I like, I like Joe Casey a lot. He writes a lot of weird shit that people wouldn't normally buy, like back in the 90s, he wrote like a Kiss comic book from Dark Horse. And I'm like, I'm going to buy that. I don't like Dark Horse comics or Kiss, but Joe Casey's writing it. I'll probably find some enjoyment out of it, just stuff like that where, and I like that. That's the kind of thing I think that's important as a creator is like sell yourself to them and why you love what you do. And you're going to make a real fan, not just someone who's buying this from you because, you talked them into it.
Yeah. I really do think, I think you hit the nail on the head. You have to be proactive, but not be pushy. I mean, you just have, because sitting, like you said, either drawing or I never do sketches or anything at conventions. I don't have my head down or any. I mean, you gotta at least
out there for
engage, kind of if they're interested. What was that?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Oh, you cut out for a second, but
sorry. But I'm a big advocate of standing up and not sitting, because you're at your eye level with the person.
Yeah.
So I've got a few tricks for that. Like one thing, I usually bring like a soft mat that I can, so my feet don't hurt. Like they have those kitchen mats. So I do that. The other thing I did was I got, and I had to kind of make some modifications, but I bought like the biggest kind of stool that I could find.
Smart.
And then I had to actually extend the legs on it because it was like a metal stool. So I put like wooden dowels in it to make it so about the same height sitting down as I would be standing up. So I don't always have to stand, but if somebody comes, I can just kind of ease myself off without anyone knowing.
Right.
And then it's just like,
you're like kind of leaning back more than sitting,
Yeah.
I think those things are just, it's important to be like approachable and feel like, because these creators just sitting back, drawn on their iPad, it's like, it's so detached from, some, like, you don't want to interrupt them almost,
right?
Because like
and I think sometimes at cons, a lot of the time, the guys I'll meet after a con who are like, my sales were terrible, are the dudes who were just sitting there drawing the whole time. And you're like, well, how do you expect to sell if you're not doing the work? Like, you got to treat it like, because this is, and it's not something I do perfectly at all. Like, I'm still kind of learning it the few times that I'll probably start conventioning again in a year or so. But what I started realizing is I have to treat this as if I just got hired to sell my comic. Like, because we all know how to, like, we've all, at least most of us, have worked like a crappy customer service job, where you treat the customer well, you greet them when they walk in, like, you want to be approachable, you don't want to be like sitting down if you're at a register, you want to be standing up in front. And it's like, how come we can do that for like corporate people who cared, who were just a number to. But when it comes to our own stuff that we poured our heart and souls into, we can't be engaged in like greeting customers and like treating it like a good thing worth selling, you know, like, yeah. So I love that idea. And I feel like for me, the thing I always have to fool myself into is like, I'm trying to convince somebody to go see a movie or something, right? Like if you're talking to a friend about a movie you love, that they're like, I don't know, I'm not that you're like, no, like it's worth it. Like you're excited about it and passionate about it. That passion will make a good story. I feel like for me, that's hard sometimes because
Josh pretty bad right now.
Oh, am I clipping out? Did I freeze?
You didn't freeze for me. I think it might be
okay.
Deece, but
okay. Yeah, I guess the gist is just basically like the if we're trying to sell ourselves and sell the thing, we should be able to like get over the insecurities of being a creator of something, because when you create something, it's obviously easier to be like talking up I don't know, like Andor. Like I love Andor, the new Star Wars series. I think it's some of the best Star Wars that's happened in years. I could talk to somebody for hours about that and how great it is and what makes it unique. And yet with my own stuff, it's like, how do I boil it down to a pitch line? How do I, you know, it feels like more work. And yet that's the thing I'm really passionate about, is this, obviously, because you spend years doing these things. So I love that idea of, I also love the idea of not being the carnival barker, because again, like Scott and I could regale you with, and I'm sure you could regale us with like crazy stories. I had a guy once do the like the volcano experiment, like the science experiment, like to get people to buy his book. He was like setting off the science fair volcano, and all of the booth neighbors were like, I hate this guy so much. And he had like a loudspeaker and music, and it's like, no, we don't have to go that far. Like just be approachable and human. You know.
There's been people running too, you know. The other thing is like there's kind of a fine line between, you know, you were talking about, you could talk somebody's ear off about Andor, and that's kind of, you definitely want to make that connection. And if you have these conversations with people, that's awesome. But there's a fine line between, you know, both on the person on the other side. Can you hear us, Deece?
Oh no, are we losing?
Yeah, a little bit. I'm going to move closer to my router. Maybe I get.
Okay. But what I was saying was, there's kind of a fine line.
Shut up. Now my dogs are going crazy. Sorry.
Yeah. We've got dogs too, so no worries.
Yeah.
Hey. Jesus criminy. Sorry, I'm trying to get closer to my router. Maybe that'll help with
yeah. But what I was saying was, you know, you want to get these conversations, but there's kind of between the person on the other, because there's been people that you start talking to and they just want to continue talking, and it's like in another situation maybe, but like I'm also here to like sell books and stuff, so you can't monopolize my time. So sometimes you get that, but just if you know, the goal is just to have a good connection with somebody, and just a nice, sweet, you know, fairly short interaction and everything, and then you know, but you know,
although Scott, like this is a trick that I learned from watching Chris Kawagiwa, who we've had on. He's in my opinion, he's the best person at a con I've ever seen. Like because like he'll booth next to a rock star and he'll have a line within 10 minutes, and the rock star will have a shorter line. But anyhow, one thing I've observed with him is he never rushes somebody off, because what happens is if you have a pile of people talking to you at a booth, a line forms the crowd, like every time, because of the just psychology of humans. So they're like, well, something important must be there, because like there's 10 people trying to get in there, so now I got to try to get in there. So that's the counter. I mean, obviously we've all had the guy who just is sharing his life story, and you have a person holding out cash behind him, and you're like, dude, I need to get that money that you're blocking. Like, but yeah.
I think there's a way to to navigate that because
Yeah.
and
You
some
can
people, the
move them a
moment, they don't
little.
really, I think you can pleasantly say, "Oh, can you hold on? Just I am, I'm interested in what you're saying, but can you hold on a minute
Yeah.
while I address this person?"
Yeah.
And then if that goes on, the person's people leave and the guy's still waiting if they want to wait, or sometimes they'll walk off, or I don't know. I
Yeah.
mean, it's
Well, one of the things that, well, at least for me, like I always my girlfriend's usually with boothing with
that's
me.
good if you have
Yeah,
another person
having
too.
a booth mate's huge.
Yeah.
Yeah, so like we know how to like play
Yeah.
defense and kind of box out when someone needs
Yeah.
to be like, hey, if someone just wants to buy something, like she can handle just like, oh yeah, here. But if like they're like want to talk to the person who created the book and need want a little more information, I can, she can kind of handle the guy that's wants to tell
Yeah.
his life
Yeah.
story. Like,
Yeah.
she loves biographies. So, yeah, it's so having someone there is helpful too.
Yeah.
That's also, a lot of people that are, usually if you've got an artist who has some sort of a following where they are doing commissions, because I mean, for artists that could be, that may be the reason why you're at conventions, is because you get a lot of commissions and things like that. But if you're going to do that, you need to have somebody there to handle sales and things while you're doing it. And then you can pleasantly lift up and greet the person, autograph, whatever. And so, yeah. So if you have that luxury to have somebody with you, especially
also restroom breaks. Like for anybody who hasn't convention before, you want to make like if you're boothing alone, make friends with your booth mates near you. Because those tables are gonna watch your back when you have to run to the restroom. If you're boothing with a person, that's great because then you can trade shifts and not leave a dead table, which is ideal.
Yeah. There's just little, all sorts of little things that have worked for me. That the big thing I learned right away was like I've got my whole booth in one tote.
Yeah.
Besides my boxes of books, like I'll one or two short boxes depending on where I'm at. Of books, like I have a tote, and it can get it all set. I can tear down and set up in about 10 minutes.
Yeah. Out of curiosity, this is a weird one, because you're going to be doing this, potentially like all over the States as you tour.
Mm-hmm.
That brings up an interesting thing. What do you do? Are you going to pre-ship books to cons, or are you just going to like fit them all on like a tote and then have like a really big luggage thing? Like how are you going to deal with the shipping stuff?
Yeah.
How have you been dealing with that? I'm curious. Always curious.
Everything I've done so far where I'm doing conventions, I've driven to.
Okay.
The stuff that I'm going to fly to, that's a good question. I'm still, that's still up in the air. I'll probably, I mean, realistically, I would probably, I would, and I might, you kind of got to worry about damage, but I mean, it's only $30 to check a bag at the.
Yep.
So as opposed, you can check two short boxes for $50 probably, as opposed to shipping two short boxes is probably going to cost you more than that. So I would probably just check them and pack. You can only do minimal dressings for I can't do the whole setup for my booth, but not the way I would at stuff I drove to, but I got a roll up banner and stuff like that. And you have a little rack and, kind of keep it a little tighter, but.
I love that. That's good advice too. Cause I remember when I did TCAF a couple years back, that's something I didn't really think about till I had it booked. And then I was like, wait a minute, how am I going to get the books there?
Yeah.
And it's in Canada. And then I realized like what I need to do is I just brought like a big luggage bag, just packed full of books. And that worked fine. Like it was, but it would have been almost impossible to get them to the con because it's like they'd have to clear through customs and
oh my gosh. Yeah, it was, and that's kind of, it's funny. I probably figured this out I don't know how I want to say the hard way, but when I when I go on tour doing comedy, during the day for years, all I did was like, I would go to comic book shops and I would go to antique stores and like I would buy comic books, you know?
Yeah.
So every time at the end of a trip, I'm like sending a box of comics back to myself to meet myself at home.
Yeah.
You know? And then I started realizing, like, you know, I got to buy the packing materials, then I got to ship it, and then like hope it makes it. I'm like, oh, I can just buy a bag at Goodwill for $3 and like a big bag, and like put them in there and like check this thing for $30, and then it's you know. So I started doing the math. I'm like, oh, that's, you know, you can do it. It's not that, it's pretty affordable actually.
Yeah. And you don't have to like wait for shipping. Yeah. That's great. Anyhow, sorry. That was always interesting to me. That's cool. That's cool. I bet that experience too, that you've had from touring and stuff is going to come massively in handy.
It does teach you how to economize.
Yeah.
That's for sure.
Okay, weird question, Scott. If you have a place you were heading to, just interrupt me.
I was going to address some stuff in the chat, but go ahead, Josh.
Okay, so weird question. With the comedy / show thing, are you going to be booking? Because conventions aren't very flexible when they are, but comedy shows could be. So, are you kind of going to book the comedy shows after you're set at the convention, so you know the travel location, and then you'll hit the clubs around there? Or how is that going to work, like timing wise? Or are you kind of basing the cons around where you're touring, which comedy clubs you're hitting?
Now the way I'm really looking at it is I'm looking at the conventions, because I wanted to make this first year the most impactful. Really spend this first year like dedicating as much as I can to it. So I'm kind of putting that as the priority. So, because I run a production company, I produce a lot of my own shows now. Yeah. So I mean, all I need is a location that I'm going to, and I can create my own show. Yeah. So I can find I can find a small theater in Fort Wallet, or I can find venues that like will give me a budget for a comedy show, and then they sell a bunch of food and drinks because they have entertainment for the night. So it's really more booking my convention tour, and then finding whether I'm driving there. If I'm driving, find convenient spots along the way that are best, kind of pace it out so I can do a couple shows as I go up, make some money, and then, or if I fly there, go in a day or two early to do shows like Thursday, Friday night, and then have a convention Saturday, Sunday.
I love it. That's great. I just think that's a brilliant plan for also, monetizing the trip too. Like I think,
if I'm gonna go to an area, I might as well go in a couple days early, do, make money, do some shows, comedy shows, and then, just stay for the convention. So double down on it.
I love it. And also you're doubling down on a bunch of things you love, which is that's the best scenario to be in, where you get to do multiple creative avenues of things you love,
and also doing things that any adult when I was a kid told me would get me nowhere.
Oh, that never fails to make me happy in life, is whenever I've told friends of mine, who kind of disparage the art thing. I've been like, art bought my house. All right. So like, okay. You bought your house with hard work. I bought my house with art. And it was hard work.
I don't know if you were like a class clown in school or whatever, but you probably got to like, stop telling jokes. That's not going to get you anywhere.
Believe me, 100% all the time. I was into comic books. No one thought that was a waste of time. I loved comedy. Waste of time. Yeah. Look at me now, suckers.
I love it though. Yeah, the convention thing's interesting. I'm still looking I was finally making some really good headway in conventions, but then had a bit of a career shift, and so the next year or so I'm doing some schooling and stuff. But I do want to get back to cons, because it is a very pleasant experience. It's also it's hard to explain when what it's like with comedy. You practice it and then you perform it, and there's a response. But with comics, you don't sit there next to the reader while they're reading it and go, oh, what do you think of that part and stuff. So conventions and stuff are also fun because it's one of the few times you'll actually engage. You're actually engaging directly with the reader as they're purchasing it, or maybe they come back if it's a 2-day con and they get to talk to you about it. Yeah, that's just like, I don't know. I feel like that gives you the juice to keep making more issues and stuff, you know?
Yeah, it really is like the adrenochrome to my New World Order. Really is what keeps me going.
I love it.
All right, I was going to go to the chat. We had a comment. So Wonder Rob says, I'm an older guy, worked in animation for many years, but I was really interested in how you make your own studio. And I'm not exactly sure what you mean by studio. I mean, if you're talking animation, that's not something I know I could speak on. But if it's just your own, I guess, creative studio, I mean, I think that's more, I think you start with a small project. Hopefully you see some success on that and you build. I mean, it's kind of the same, what you were talking about early, Deece, is where you've got, you've got an artist working on your book, but you want to take it to the next level. Hopefully the book's successful so you can pay the artist more so they can dedicate more time. Then if that book's more successful, maybe you haven't, because you're, as a writer, I know you've got a number of ideas, you get that going. And if that's successful, then you kind of build on the next one. I don't know if that exactly answers the question, but I mean, me, I don't know if I have ambitions of, like, as far as studio. I guess you consider CircWorks Art Labs sort of a studio, but it's a one-man studio. I do a lot of different things, but most of it's just all me. So yeah, I don't know, but I think not get ahead of yourself. Just start on one particular project and hopefully see success and then build from there. I think that's how most things start. When it's like, you look at somebody like a Robert Kirkman, who basically started with an image, I started with the indie book. That book was somewhat successful, did another book. And then now he's branched off into games and like TV and everything. And, relative for the size of like Skybound, relatively short amount of time. So
yeah,
I think but it all starts with one thing. I know a lot of people, like, I've heard people like, oh, I'm going to start a comic book studio and these are the titles I'm going to do. And they're trying to do all this stuff at once. And I would start with one thing and build from there. Yeah.
Well, I think so. It looks like Rob followed up his basically how to make and sell your own stories with no studio job or agent. I would say that this is a day and age. I mean, I've worked in music. I've been a professional writer. I've done stand-up comedy for years. So I've worked in a lot of different mediums of art. And I will tell you, especially I'll take stand-up comedy because that's the one I'm most versed in and been doing the longest. There was a time when agents would sit at the Comedy Store and watch comedians and try to find the next big talent, or the talent agent for the Tonight Show would go look at who's, up and coming. That shit is long gone. That ship has sailed. There's no editors looking for the next big script. There's no comic books looking for the next big comic book thing. You have to go make it big, and once you do, if you make it worth their time, it'll show up in their algorithm.
Right. 100%. Yeah.
That's it. That's the only way to make this work anymore in any artistic medium. So how you do that is just kind of it's a little different for everyone. I would say just a lot of hustle and grit and marketing. Get out there and find creative ways to get your art out there, build an audience, get people to follow you. And once it gets big enough where people are paying attention, then you've got some leverage. But until then.
Yeah. And I would say comic books are a great place to start. I mean, I'm not a big fan of the idea of I want to make a movie, too expensive, so I'm going to make a comic and then build that. I mean, I get it. And I mean, it's definitely a route to take, but I'm such a fan of comics. I think comics should be the first love. And if that stuff happens, great.
Yeah.
But it is an inexpensive way to put an idea about it. And there are people looking at comics as entertainment properties. So,
Yeah.
I mean, that's probably the least expensive. I mean, there's a lot of time involved, but to create a comic, especially if you're an indie person, but that's probably the most logical way to go if you actually have aspirations of building some sort of entertainment property. I would say is a comic.
Yeah. I mean, there's places like Mad Cave that's basically just an IP house.
Yeah.
All they do is just produce stuff that they hope is going to get bought for something.
Yeah.
I mean, so and that's Hollywood's looking, because they're soulless, succubus lizard people that want to steal your ideas for pennies on the dollar. So they're looking for people they can bilk out of their IP. So that could be you. You could be the lucky one. But they're looking for IP out there, and comic books is so heavy, right? So big in that right now that it is a good way. And I'm with you, Scott. Like, I think you should. I love comic books so much that I'd want to make a comic book over a movie, but also, a comic book is just kind of like a intricate storyboard for a film.
Yeah.
So it's if you do want to make a movie, it is a way you can, if you produce a decent comic book, it's a very easy way for stupid producers to understand your product.
Right.
That's actually a huge point too, because if you've worked in sales and you're a creative, you'll be surprised how many people have no visual imagination whatsoever. Like, you could describe something and they cannot see it. And there is some magic. There is a reason that, I agree with Scott. I'm a big fan of artists like Chris Ware, where it's like you really couldn't make like Jimmy Corrigan, the smartest kid on earth, the movie. It would be horrible. It's like, it's a perfect thing as it is, right? But it's like, that being said, I can see why they get adapted to film so much, because again, like Deece said, you're helping people who may not have the visual imagination be able to see exactly what you're talking about, rather than just words. You have the full visuals. You're like, here is the movie. Here's what it would look like. That does help. And pitch money can be pretty serious money. So it's I'm kind of with Scott. I don't think that should be an objective of doing comics. Stay out of comics if that's your only goal, because you're muddying the waters. But but at the same time, if you do make a comic that you're sincere and passionate about, and you manage to option it, like, that is some of the most serious money you could make in comics. So it's kind of a weird, interesting thing, but I can see why it works, because again, anytime you try to pitch something to an executive that's visual, they have to see it. Like, just anytime. I've rarely met anybody at the executive or middle management level who usually can actually get it just from words. I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah. So Rob, if you're done work as a storyboard artist, I'd say, you can even put short, 10, 12 page stuff together that's kind of and it doesn't, you don't have to publish it as a comic book, but in kind of comic book format to pitches, whatever. I mean, I'm not sure what you want to do specifically, but
right. But it just comes down to, like, also, building that audience and everything. But there's so many opportunities available for indie comic artists with Kickstarter and everything like that, whether it's Patreon or whatever. If you can build an audience around it. I mean, it's interesting in your case, Deece, where you have an audience for the stand-up stuff, because like you said, it's not like agent. I mean, you have a base, and you're actually getting the venues, bringing people to it. So, I mean, if you have that, assuming there's some crossover for the comics, you can push some people over to the comics.
Yeah.
So but you definitely have that experience where how to build an audience, and that sometimes can be the tough part. I definitely struggle with that myself, but that's that's why I'm online doing shows like this and everything else. And so, and hopefully that, and some people have an easier time building that audience than others, or some people are better at, but I mean, that's, yeah. And it's almost like the sort of the nature of the beast. You have to be able to do that. I think nowadays you've got to create it and drive people to it.
I think a lot of artists kind of like look down on the promotional aspect of it too, or kind of have some disdain, which I understand, of like the social media aspect and the promotion of like, I just want to do my art. And I'm like, that's fine if you want no one to ever see your art.
Yeah.
But like, if you can't be mad that no one sees or cares about your art if you don't care enough to put it in front of people. Like, I get it. Social media is gross. It sucks.
Yeah.
I don't like it either. I cannot wait for the day that I can afford to pay someone to run my social media. but you can goddamn bet Inferno Comics is still going to be active on social media. I just won't be pushing the buttons anymore.
Yeah.
Because it's a necessary evil in doing those things of promoting and going out and talking to people.
Yep.
And just it's just so necessary, because it's the only way people are going to find out about it and really connect. Like when we were talking about at conventions of selling yourself, not selling your book.
Yeah.
Those things are just, I think, paramount with marketing.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's see, what haven't we touched base on yet that you kind of wanted to go over? As far as I know, we've talked a lot about promotions, conventions, but I know in your email you had a few things that you kind of want to put out there and kind of get a response on. And
well, we just talked about promo and stuff and doing that. What are some of the ways, I'm interested in some of the ways other people do their promotion. Like I said, I know kind of my attack plan. I set up what I felt was a pretty good plan of a promotion for the book when we first started doing it. But, everyone's got other things that work for them too.
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, for advice, not necessarily for you, because you've already kind of you've kind of figured out a road to take, but just as what you're doing, I would say figure out what your strengths are, know what your strengths are, and if you're not great at promotion, then maybe you do have to figure out what does it take to get somebody on board that is. But I think you have to understand, like throughout my career, there's things that I'm not great at, but I've still done what I can to at least get an understanding around it. So I know a little bit, because then if you have somebody else to do it, at least you can point them in the right direction. But I think it's just a matter of what strengths do you have? How can you apply them to what you're doing? Like I said, you've got the fan base as far as, and how to promote as far as stand-up comedy. So just taking that, I'm, a lot of this for what I'm doing now, some of it which is comics, some of it which isn't. I mean, the kind of things that I'm doing on YouTube, it just goes back to stuff that I love to do as a kid. I love to build things. I love to take things apart, figure out how they work. So that's kind of a skill I have. And I mean, and I've got background in like set design and stuff like that. So I build sets and, for my videos and it's kind of funny because I remember years ago, whenever we had like a family event, my brother would take and he would, he had editing software and he would edit together real, rudimentary, editing and putting together like family videos and then play them for everyone. Mm-hmm. And I was like, I was really impressed with that. And then, gradually as I started getting into YouTube and I learned how to edit little by little and I get better at it. And then I look back, I'm like, man, I can do all that stuff now. And I hadn't really stopped to think about it. Like just little by little along the way, I learned how to edit it and I watch what other people are doing. So now I can do things that I couldn't do before. I mean, when I was a kid, I used to do, talk about stand-ups and stuff. I used to do, SNL type skits and my dad would turn on the camera, but we didn't know how to edit. So we'd have to, do it all in one take, or we'd have to, there'd be parts where my dad, and this is early on where my dad had like a video cassette recorder, but they were really expensive, so he wouldn't let us touch it. So he'd have to be watching and turn it on, and you hear him say like, okay, 1, 2, 3, go, and that would be in the tape, and then so all that stuff. But so all that kind of stuff that I used to do, now I kind of put that into my videos. So, everyone's got skills and things. Just think, what are your strong points, and how can you leverage that into making something interesting that people are going to want to gravitate to based on whatever you're good at.
Yeah.
I love that. I will say that for me, like one of the things that was I don't know, it's weird. I was talking to our friend of the show, Jim Lujan, about this. But like I had a couple like early failures. One of them got published later on, but it's like the publisher initially dropped it and stuff like that. It was one of those kind of life events where most people probably would have just called it quits and not made another book. And what I did instead was just had this reassessment of like, I don't really care if people buy it or not. I'm going to make the best book I can again, and then we'll see. And what ended up happening from that was then when I got a publisher for that book, a publisher very quick, like I got a writing agent, and then I got a publisher very quickly for the previous book that hadn't been published. And then another book deal for the one I'm working on now. And what I've noticed and that I've been, and I think you guys do this too, but for me has been really valuable is the promotion's very important, stuff like that. Hustle when you get it out but when you're making it, make the best thing you can possibly make. Yeah. Because when you hustle it, like Deece was saying, you're selling yourself, and there's nothing easier to sell than something is good. Like, it's good. You're not just selling a product. You made the best thing in the world. So now you're like the artisanal bakery that, like, if somebody goes in there and they're like, I don't really like bread, you're like, well, that's cool. It's your loss because this is the best bread you'll ever have. Like, you know what I mean? Like, you want to be in a scenario where you're serving up a good product. And to me, I think that the work, this is weird, but it's like, I think the work comes first. And if you do the good work, this sounds like the what is it called? The secret or something. I don't want to sound too woo woo, but I do think if you do the good work and you do the legwork, you will inevitably find success, in what you're doing. But it does require just kind of pushing through and like really, like, I'm sure Deece has probably, like, I'm sure in comedy to get there, you probably had crowds that just you killed, and then you go into a new city and it's like all the material bombs, and you're like, what happened? This was killing, but it's like that you have to do that work to get a good set. You have to do that work anywhere in any industry, and especially with art. So, like, to me, that's the biggest thing. And like backing up what Deece was saying too, we're in an era where you shouldn't wait for some magic, we're not in a fantasy novel where you're going to meet the magic wizard that opens the gateway to, success for you in any entertainment field. It literally is one of those things of, if a door's not open, find like a window. If the window's not open, like climb onto the roof, like just find a way and
build your own
have
house.
Yeah. Or just build your own house and then flip off the house next door and be like, I didn't want that house anyway. Yeah.
Own shit.
But yeah, that's that's kind of the era we're in, where it's like you just have to make the good thing and then try to get as many eyeballs on it as possible just by hustling, and don't give up, because like I've been learning that if you do the good work and you stay consistent with it, there is like, it maybe not for everybody, but I have noticed like, we have a friend who just got an animation deal and stuff. And it's a lot of that's just because he's made years of just animation after animation and animation, like, regardless, like whether, people were watching it or not. And so I feel like do the good work, and it'll come. If you build it, they'll come. Oh my gosh.
Yeah. There
become a bad inspirational show.
I think if you build
Deece,
it,
save us. We just,
I would say build it. They will come if you let people know about it.
Yes.
Which is what Josh is doing. I mean, there's definitely, we're talking about strengths and things. Whereas I don't know, since Deece isn't necessarily an artist. I mean, I guess you could find a way to do this with writing, but
Deece is an artist.
Well,
comedy is an art, and so is writing.
I meant
To be
specifically.
fair, I do the covers for my book, so.
Oh yeah.
But well, there you go. But what I'm talking about is like, so Josh, so where Deece has kind of built the fan base through, he's got that route through the comedy and everything. Josh is sitting here. He's not waiting till his book's done to let people know about it. He's showing people the process every single time he does a live stream. This is whetting people's appetite for when this book actually comes out. So there's two different two different ways to go about it. Going back to my point about playing to whatever strengths you have. So, I mean, there's two really good examples there of how you can do it. And there's many, many more, just depending on, before, I would have never, because I don't do stand-up, but I would have never even considered, you could sell, if you do stand-up, you could sell comics at a merch table. I mean, that opened my eyes. And there's so many different things, no matter what other things that you do that may have a connection, or that you could take those skills and apply them to whatever your creative endeavors are.
Yeah. And I think also in kind of tangentially what we're talking about, like what Josh said about having a good product, I think also like literally, not just metaphorically having it, but like literally having a good tangible product, meaning, put quality into your goods, like speaking about comic books, like for my book, Kill Stan, like I was very meticulous about like a higher grade cover. And like, I really wanted to, and I've had a lot of people comment on it, like, oh, feels like really substantial, like really quality. Like, I used to do consulting, and I had this one client, and they were outfitting all their salespeople with new uniforms, and they were like, they were going to sell merchandise too, and they were like chinsing out on the shirt, and I'm like, dude, spend $2 more a shirt and buy shirts that people are going to want to wear. What's the point of selling shirts that no one's going to want to wear? Like make a product that's quality that people want to wear or want to read, feel.
And then also your salespeople want to sell because they don't feel like they're hoodwinking people.
Yeah, exactly. But I mean, as far as comic books, having something that's not something. I don't know if you guys still ever pick up modern comic books, but most of the time it's like, feels like about one ply. They're so goddamn thin, So if you can give people something that feels and looks professional, I mean, you're already so much further along than a lot of stuff in the industry.
I love that.
Yeah, 100%. All right, well, we're getting close to our 90 minutes. So is there anything else that we haven't touched on? Of course, we're going to go and give everyone a chance to promote whatever they got one more time. And while we're saying this, if there's any other questions in the chat that people want to throw out last minute, let us know. But anything else we haven't covered that you wanted to touch on?
I think that's most. Let's see. I'm looking at the conventions, how I maximize promo eyes. I think that's the most of it, to be honest with you.
Should we maybe do one real quick, like pitch or just breakdown of what issue 2, like the teaser for issue 2? Like, what is issue 2? What are we expecting?
It's tough to tease issue number 2 if you haven't read issue number 1, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
Because as Scott mentioned earlier, number 1 ends with a pretty big cliffhanger. So it kind of when, where, and how it continues is yet to be seen. So it's just know that this story is very much about the wild ride inside one man's head of his desire to no longer be around. And I will say that kind of the drive of that idea is that not the drive for the main idea for the story is that I wanted people to understand that it's not always like you were leaving, you just saw Zorro with your parents and you're walking down Crime Alley and Joe Chill shoots him and now you become Batman. Like, it's not always that.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's just like life is hard, like just the daily grind can be so oppressive that we don't even realize it sometimes, because it just has become normal and we've become numb to it. This is kind of that awakening of realizing that day-to-day oppressive life. And obviously we take it to an extreme with this story of the how it's manifested, but there's a lot of subtext of I think people can relate to as far as their day-to-day lives and how how they view the world sometimes.
I love it.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm anxious to figure out kind of what happens because, like you said, it's kind of a cliffhanger. So, which any good comic is. So, yeah.
I really wanted that first one to have that big hook at the end, so people go like, "Wait."
Yeah. I could see a couple different ways it could go. It could have been misleading. It could have been, but you got to get the first issue. I assume you can still buy past issues, or can you get them? I assume you can get the first issue if you back the second issue, right?
Yes. Yep. They're in the campaign. There's a couple packages that include the first issue, either digitally or physical copies. And also we have add-ons that you can just add on the first issue if you want to any package also. And there's a couple different covers. There's even a package where you can get all 3 covers from number 1 and all 3 covers for number 2. So,
all right, and there is a link in the description, so I made it super easy for you guys. You don't have to type in anything. Did you set up like a direct link or something like killstand.com that goes to Kickstarter, anything like that, or?
No, I mean it's like Kickstarter /.
The easiest thing to do is just go to the description in this video, click on that link, that'll take you right to the Kickstarter. And you can also follow Deece on his website. There's a link for that as well. Check him out if he's coming to your city, or if you happen to be in the San Antonio area.
Yeah, if you're
is that where you do most of your shows? Or?
I do shows. I've got a monthly show at a comedy club here called Upstage Comedy Lounge. It's usually like third Sunday of the month, so come check that out. I do some other shows around the area. If you want to see my stand-up digitally, also you can buy my special on my website, Deece Comedy, right now. Click the Not Your Cup of Tea link, and we're doing a special where you can pay what you want to get the 1-hour digital download of the special. You just, $5, $10, you can even pay $1. It's a dick move, but you'll still get it. We'll email you a full digital download, the 4K.
I feel like you guys should set it up to where you do email the video, but also like a middle finger or something. Like when people do that, there has to be a way to rig that to happen.
People have actually done $1, and literally after PayPal, I get like 43 cents or something. So I'm like, thank you, that's great. But whatever, fine. They want, follow me on inferno.earth on Instagram. Inferno.earth is the website also, and all the links for the Kickstarter and everything is there too. So
beautiful.
All right, Josh, what about you?
All right, so I have a new album out that you guys should check out. Let me see if I can find that the picture. It's called Stumbling Blindly Onto the Road. So, check that out on streaming platforms everywhere. Weirdly enough, you can buy it on Apple Music and stuff like that. But the best thing you could do is just rotate it, listen to it on Spotify or on your streaming music platforms for free. And then aside from that, there's Jacob's Apartment, which is a story about 2 polar opposite roommates that through tough life circumstances find themselves drawn together. And as they're drawn together, dreams and reality start interweaving. So it's kind of like if you took Eternal Sunshine for the Spotless Mind, put it in a blender with Ghost World, that's Jacob's apartment. Consider buying that at your local bookstores, Barnes and Nobles, whatever. And also 2 stories. A story about faith and mental illness that tries to destigmatize hard conversations about depression and suicide, which is actually kind of on topic with some of Deece's themes too. So make sure you check that out as well. I'm excited to check out Deece's next book because it's really exciting. So thanks for coming on, Deece.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys.
All right.
Scott, how do we keep track of this business? Yeah. But before that, where should I go to check out my nostalgia needs?
Well, actually, you don't have to go too far because right on this website, you can check out some of the videos where I'm taking, I call it reventification. I'm taking vintage nostalgia, ephemera, kitsch from the 70s, 80s, and 90s and putting a weird spin on it. For instance, like if you remember Fun Dip, I made Sad Dip, which is basically Fun Dip, but with gross flavors like broccoli and mushroom and gross stuff like that. And I actually make the packaging, I make the actual product and everything, and I do that all in video. So super fun. Check out those videos. Or if you're a comic creator, go back to my playlist, Making Comics 101. It is seriously the most comprehensive pre-course on how to make comics you're going to find anywhere. It's on my YouTube channel. If you want to learn about the everything from start to finish on making a comic, or if you're just curious about one particular discipline, if you want to learn about inking, there's an episode on inking. If you want to learn about coloring, marketing, anything like that, you can jump around and do all that. And there's bonus content, and it's all available on my YouTube channel, which is right here where you're at right now. So after you click off this video, go check out some of my other stuff. Also, you can go to my website, circworks.com, where you will find one of the things that I do when I'm making these things I've been making these old vintage wax pack trading cards based on movies and TV shows that we never actually got trading cards for. So if you're a fan of Ghostbusters, you may know that they never made Ghostbusters card. They made Ghostbusters 2, but you're like, oh man, what in a weird world, what if they actually made the first Ghostbusters movie trading cards? Well, you can kind of see what that's like because I've made some, and those are all on my website. So check those out.
Scott,
yes.
This is brilliant. It said Scott made a magic 8-ball, but you ask your fortune and it says you are a loser.
I might steal that from you, Rob. I might
That's
steal
so
that.
good.
I think I've got a list of ideas, and 8-ball is probably on there. I don't know if that was the actual one, but that's brilliant. That's kind of exactly what I like to do. So yeah. But yeah, that kind of stuff, that's pretty much, you got to check that out, Rob, if you haven't, because that's exactly, if you came up with that, you probably dig some of the stuff I'm doing over there. The latest video was just me drawing a commission, but go back a couple videos. But anyway, I also have stuff on my website. I got digital products to help you make comics better, like brush packs and templates and all kinds of stuff. Yeah, and I've got, if you want to just sample that, I've got a comic maker starter kit. If you join my newsletter, you get that for free. And every month I put out stuff in my newsletter, and every time I put out a newsletter, there's always another freebie there, another download or something that comes along with that. So follow me. That's on my Substack. You can just join that on my website. Check all that stuff out. But this show, the Artcasters, we do this show every single week. Typically, we've moved to Tuesday now, so it's mostly going to be on a Tuesday. If for one reason it's Tuesday a holiday or a weird thing like that, Tuesday doesn't work, maybe we move it to a different day. But if you want to know, when we're going to go live or anything like that, the best thing to do is join the Artcasters newsletter. And we don't spam you or anything. The only thing we do is about 30, 40. Oh, and I actually forgot to do that tonight. Usually I don't forget though, but about 30, 40 minutes before we go live, I send out a newsletter letting you know where you can find us. You can tune in, check out the show, because it also does rotate between Josh's channel and my channel every other week. So it gets confusing, but just join our newsletter, link in the description, and you'll know exactly when we're going to go live. So thanks again to Deece for coming on. And great conversation, everyone. Thanks to everyone in the chat. And we'll see you guys next week on Josh's channel. See you then.